Hello, everyone. Welcome into another edition of Just Another Year Chicago, Chicago Bulls edition. We're doing these Tuesdays and Thursdays now, and I am joined by my co-host. Again, new co-host. Happy to have him on, Nick Barr. How you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing all right, Tony. I think I owe everyone a sincere apology, specifically Reen Trossman in the comments. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. Listen, I want to sincerely apologize for mixing up Kemba Walker and Kyle Lowry. I mean, it doesn't even make sense, really. The only thing they have in common, really, is that they're point guards and their names start with a K. But everything else couldn't be more different. One's pretty thick, a little rumble tumble. One's skinny, kind of a quick step back kind of guy. We all remember the Kemba step back. So one went to Villanova, one went to UConn. I mean, nothing makes sense. Okay. And I understand that. And I am wearing this one on the sleeve. I haven't even been able to look at my family in the face since then. We're going to bounce back and, I'll let Tony introduce it, but nothing better to bounce back than just hit you with the True Crime podcast.
Absolutely. And I'll get into that in a second. I also have a comment to make. Someone, Dredman, you'll see him in the comments. I forgot the numbers after it, but he pointed out that we forgot to mention the Atlanta Hawks as well as a top 3-4 contender in the East. And at first I thought, I was like, yeah, I mean, they only did it 1 year. I don't know if they're going to do it, but at the same time, they're definitely better than the 76ers. The Sixers are trash. I think we mentioned them. So
for sure.
So my apologies for forgetting the Atlanta Hawks. I do think they're good. I think Trey's awesome. I do want to see if they can do it again. I'm not saying they can't. I just want to see if they will. But I'm sure they will be in the mix. They'll probably finish above the Bulls because now they got that experience. So with that, today we are getting crazy in the preseason lull. We're going to be discussing the mysterious murder of former Bulls center Bison Dele. Nick knows how to pronounce it. I do not. And his girlfriend, Serena Kaplan. Both Nick and I had not heard of him, nor his famous death, which it actually sounds like it was pretty big news. But obviously it was before our time. It was kind of before our time. We weren't fully conscious yet, I'd say. So we figured that, maybe a few other folks had not heard of it either. And again, basketball just hasn't started yet. We still got a couple weeks. So we thought we'd maybe throw this one out there, see if you guys like it. If not, we'll never do it again. But if you like it, we'll do a bunch more. Who knows? But before we dive into it, we're going to thank our sponsor, Stupid Card Tray. I have a tray. It works. And if you want to enjoy Bulls games at home or on the road even more, head out to www.stupidcardtray.com and use code J16, JAY16 at checkout to get 16% off. Link is in the description. All right, Nick, let's get into it.
Yeah, so let's do it. So, yeah, like Tony said, it was during our time. We were young. I'm hoping that someone will, actually watch this to the full extent and maybe drop a comment if they have memories of it, if they're a little bit older, or, I just know that Tony and I weren't quite watching the news yet. We were close, but we were not quite watching the news yet. So kind of flew over my head. And I think part of it also just has to do with the fact that, it's not like he was the most well-known player, but he actually had some pretty good stats, which I'll get into here. So Bison Dele, and I'm going to call him Bison. You might be right on the Bison, but Bison sounds awesome. And I know it's relating to his Native American heritage. So I believe it is pronounced Bison Dele. Anyways, he was formerly Brian Williams. So I can see why he changed his name. It's kind of boring, but anyways, this young basketball prodigy, he was from Fresno, California originally. He was drafted by the Orlando Magic in 1991, 10th overall. So it's solid, obviously one of those guys that was just best player in the state, that kind of thing. Oh, he's going to be a big prodigy, blah, blah, blah. So he was one of those guys that kind of bounced around quite a bit. Seemed to have quite a big personality. I would actually compare him to Rodman a little bit, mostly just because they both dated Madonna, which was another thing I learned. But just based on, kind of the narrative around his name, just how he was as a teammate. Anyway, so eventually, and the reason this relates to the Bulls is so in his time of hopping around every 2 years, basically to a new team, the Bulls on the famous 1998 championship run picked him up with about like 9 games left in the season or something. And he actually came off the bench and provided a pretty big spark to the Bulls during that run, which again, I did not know. And this was his second to last season. he was 29 years old, and he was off to the Pistons now. So again, kind of following suit in his career, we're jumping around teams, and the Pistons ended up being his last destination. The Pistons signed him to a huge deal. He was actually the highest paid player on the Pistons at the time, in 1999. And before the season actually started, Dele, mind you, 30 years old now, highest paid Pistons player currently on the roster, walked away from the remaining 5-year, $37 million contract, decided to quit pro sports and find himself by traveling. Something that we all dream about, right? And he did it. He's living the dream. And again, just so we kind of relate this to basketball a little bit, we can kind of think about how crazy this is that he stepped away. He was in his prime. We know that 29, 30, 28, that tends to be the prime age. Not only that, but he was averaging the most he'd ever averaged in his career. So it truly was his prime. He was averaging like 16 points a game, 9 boards, kind of maybe not the face of the Pistons, but on paper he was. So everyone was kind of taken aback by that. I mean, that alone was a news breaking story, despite what happened down the road that I'll talk about. So that alone kind of broke a lot of news in sports. Just, player steps away from the top of his game to go discover himself. Kind of a cool story, actually. He realized he was kind of always he was labeled as eccentric. People like to throw that word around when they're not just like fitting the book rigidly. So he was an independent thinker. I think he found that once he made this certain amount of money, it seemed like it was premeditated to me, honestly, that he was just gonna like do this once he made that amount and kind of go, because he was at the peak of his career. Clearly he had something in mind, or he was just spontaneous, and hell, we would all like to be that spontaneous. But after traveling around, playing the saxophone, former saxophone guy here, actually played 1 year, he was like playing around in jazz bands, learning how to sail, just living living off the land, right? And he eventually convinced his former girlfriend to move away from New York with him and just sail the world. He had learned how to sail at this point. He was able to do it, but on his own. Of course, with a couple crew members that they would have. He was buying pretty large boats, so they needed a couple folks on there to man the helm. So got the old catamaran called Hakuna Matata. I mean, this guy was literally living the dream, man. He somehow convinced his old flame to come out there, leave New York, come to Tahiti. Like, it's all good. We're going to sail the world. And she did end up joining him. And now we're in 2002. So this was after he's kind of, discovered himself. Obviously he's not regretting his decision a couple of years later. Often you see guys bounce back on their decision. But he did not. And he was looking to set sail from, it doesn't even really matter, but he was going to go up the South Pacific, ending in Hawaii, maybe. And so he, Serena, one other captain, and I believe just one captain and one other crew member. So 4 people set sail. And before they set sail, I guess, his brother Kevin Williams, who changed his name to Miles DeBoard, unexpectedly joined them. And they always had this kind of rocky relationship.
Would you say that he climbed DeBoard the ship? I just want to say something. Go ahead, Nick.
I would say that. No, I'm glad we got to keep it light, man. It's not a great story. So, yeah. Yes, he climbed aboard the ship, and apparently they just didn't have the best relationship as brothers. I think he was trying to rekindle, after he left. It's a little tough, I would imagine, to have a younger brother who's just a international basketball star, and maybe you just don't happen to be in the 1% like the rest of us, so you just got to live in his shadow. And being the older brother, then you got an ego there. So they've had kind of this turmoil in their relationship the whole time. They've had these miscommunications, but he was like, all right, well, yeah, you can come on the boat, whatever. Now, this is the last we've ever heard from these folks. The only reports now that we have to this day, the only reason I'm able to talk about this to this day was because of a few marina men, that worked the ships out there in Tahiti where they were. So they took off on July 6th, and that was the last time Bison was ever seen, Serena, his girlfriend, was ever seen, the captain of the ship was ever seen. And notice I don't say Miles DeBoard in there. Okay. So essentially what happened was there were some, reports, there was a missing man, everyone kind of knew this was that guy that retired a couple of years ago randomly. He's missing. What? Now, keep in mind, they looked very much alike. And essentially what happened was someone had found, I think they saw a picture in the newspaper of a man posing as Bison Dele, but in fact it was Miles DeBoard, his brother. And once that was spotted, the news, everyone started talking to this marina man, this guy that actually helped him dock his boat at some point. And the important thing about this is that when he docked the boat, this man had stated that there was only one person on that boat. Only one person got off that boat, and that was it. So now, we got a manhunt going, right? But there's no suspicion of murder, or we just have 3 missing people, and 4 if you include the brother. He's kind of just on the loose, if you will. Now the kicker is this. So there was another charter boat owner, and he had said that he actually took out Miles, or who he thought was Bison Dele. He took out this man, but he was also with a woman. So now this guy had kind of disputed the claim earlier that Miles was by himself. Now there's some mysterious woman that's traveling with him, and eventually, given the boat records, because they went on a boat ride, they were able to get in touch with her. And this is kind of what blew the doors open. So basically what happened was the girlfriend of Miles was invited a long time ago, right, to do this excursion together. But she hesitated. She didn't come out. She didn't end up coming out until 2 months later. And Miles kind of just gave her the rundown. Oh yeah, Bison and Serena, they're still traveling. That's why they're not here with me, and blah, blah, blah. They're still traveling out there. So she was like, well, okay. And then one day, I think everything caught up with Miles. Clearly some guilt there as to what happened on this mysterious July 6th in 2002 on that boat. And essentially he woken up, said, I need you to drive me to Mexico today. Like, we got to go to Mexico. And of course, on the way, as you might imagine, he spilled everything out to his girlfriend. And here is what happened. So basically, what happened was Miles and Bison were getting in a fight about where they were going next, something about a destination. Amidst the fight, it got physical. Very large dudes. It got physical. You can imagine they can cause some damage. Bison was 6'11". I think Kevin was 6'8", former athlete as well. Just some large men. And the girlfriend of Bison actually tried getting in the way of the fight and somehow was actually fatally struck and killed as she was trying to break up the fight. So now they have a body, and there's Bison, Miles, the brothers, but then they have the captain and the other crew member. Now, the other crew member, he freaks out. He left earlier, I guess, because they were just fighting so much. So he actually wasn't on the boat at this time. So it was the captain and the 2 brothers. So then the captain is like, I'm turning this boat around and we're going to the authorities. Now, Dele, not wanting to do this. And again, this is what Miles DeBoard said. We don't know this is confirmed. But he had told his girlfriend that Dele was the one that actually shot and killed the captain because he didn't want the authorities finding out about it. So Dele was the one that actually shot the captain. And now Miles is looking around like he's crazy. So out of self-defense, he ends up getting the gun and killing Bison because he's fearing for his life now that he saw his brother could just kill a man like that. And apparently his girlfriend too. Now we don't know who actually killed. She kind of got inadvertently hit. Like I said, very large man, but there had to be some sort of force to just fatally kill someone, no matter how big you are. So something happened there, obviously. So then there you go. I mean, you have his admission. She, after taking him to Mexico, obviously realizes he's crazy and, turns around, takes it to the FBI. The FBI is, so the FBI is actually looking into, so on September 5th, amidst all this going on, the FBI was notified of a $152,000 transaction to buy gold. And it was Bison Dele's business manager. And he's like, why would, Bison doesn't need to buy gold. And he realized that it was signed in his name, everything was forged. And so then he ended up he called Bison, and he realized, his business manager realized that the voice on the answering machine was not Bison anymore. It was Miles. So his heart kind of sank. He knew like he was trying to cover up something. So they kind of set up a sting operation in Phoenix. They get Miles on, that forged whatever gold note it was. They get him in for questioning, but and mind you, no evidence has been found on the boat. It's been, it was later discovered it was repainted. There was only one bullet hole in the boat, and it was like patched up, and there was no bullet casings, like nothing really for evidence. So they didn't have a whole lot, but they finally got a reason to like bring him in, right? Because of this whole like note thing. And obviously it's illegal within itself, but he was actually released because he just said, well, they're missing. Like, I don't know anything about it. The business manager actually, I thought the business manager was going to rat him out, just be like, well, that voicemail and blah, blah. Sounds like he kind of covered him up and was just like, yeah, he doesn't know where they are. But the business manager had no reason to think otherwise, but he's just like eventually after they get out of there, he's just like screaming at Miles, like, where are they? And Miles is like, I'm not telling you, they have the death penalty in Arizona. So that was his reasoning for not telling anyone. So that's pretty much the story. Unfortunately, I mean, I hate to end it on that kind of note, but no bodies have been found. None of the three have been found. And the big kicker is that just as they're building this case, like obviously he got off after that gold thing, but they're, the FBI still like, he's still a suspect. They just don't have enough, right, to convict right now. So before they can even have another conversation with Miles, get him in on another charge, whatever it may be, he ends up overdosing on insulin on a beach in Mexico 3 weeks after he was like interrogated. And that's why it's kind of cold at this point. I mean, I would like to think they'd maybe have found the bodies if they had some more time with Miles, or, if he hadn't passed away or whatever, but kind of messed up, man. And I mean, that's an understatement. Obviously tragic situation that doesn't, I just don't feel like it gets talked about that much for such a wild story. And even just like doing research, like, I don't know if you realize this, but like a lot of the big articles like that you can find from like legit publications were all like from the actual time that it happened, or like the earliest I found was like 2006, but it was like ABC, but then everyone else talking about it were like, I just was surprised not to see bigger publications revisiting this. It's just weird. And he was on the championship Bulls team, and it sounds like he played too. So, not that needs to make it any more relevant, but, yeah, I just found it a little odd. Obviously real sad. Someone got taken from us that was really living the dream. Made enough money. I'm going to live off the land. And unfortunately, lost his own life and a couple others on the way. But hey, man, that was our true crime segment.
Yeah. A couple thoughts from me on that is one, the research I did was I had much less information. It was like you said, how people they kind of report on it at the time, and it really wasn't, I guess, talked about as much as you'd expect, maybe. And again, we weren't alive then, so maybe it was like front page on
Right.
whatever, and we just didn't find those articles. But what was interesting is the article I read, the main article that I read was, 95% of his NBA life, whatever. And then the last like paragraph and a half was just like, oh yeah, then he went on a boat with his brother, and basically everyone thinks that, his brother killed him. And then it was just like
so ambiguous.
Him. And it's like, what? There's so much more. I don't care about the NBA stuff, honestly. Like, if this was just a random person or random people and this happened, like, this would already be so interesting. This is what you would definitely make a Netflix like little short docu-series out of if they were just normal people, because 100%. It was a forgery with everything. And my other comment is I'm not surprised they didn't find necessarily the bodies or really any evidence like that, because especially if you're in the ocean, I mean, one, it's deep. Two, where do you start? Unless someone tells you, here's where we were on a map. The captain he killed the captain too. So that's like the only guy that would probably know where they even were.
True. And the unfortunate
comb the bottom of the ocean, like it doesn't exactly work that way.
Yeah. And if I were to dive in a little deeper, I would also be curious as to that other crew member that was on the ship, that he actually ended up leaving just because their altercations were so bad. Now he got out in time, because before like the ultimate altercation, where the deaths happen, he was already off by then, because when they were docked, he was like, I'm getting out of here, like, and he just dipped out. Obviously the captain, kind of like in Wolf of Wall Street, when they're just like, you keep driving, they're like going through, you can't do anything if you're the captain, right? You got to keep going no matter what. I mean, you don't really have that many places to go, I suppose, on the water too, but that would be something I would like to hear, is just, what really was that turmoil about? Why was it so serious? Like, it couldn't have just been like, oh, we're going in the wrong direction, so I'd be curious, about some more background on that. But yeah, just kind of unfortunate that, I guess, obviously, that it's a cold case, and you never want to see that, for the families and just everything. But, also just from a reporting standpoint, I'm just a little disappointed in journalism, man. What's new, right?
I agree. So I guess what was my last comment? I do agree with you that I do want to hear from the other crew member. I totally forgot that was like, when you start telling like one of the jokes of the stories where it's like, the horse's name is Friday, and then you go on and it's like at the end you're like, a guy was just there for it, and you saw it, but the police still couldn't do it. It's like, how did this guy not at least, maybe he did come forward, and maybe they were just like, yeah, okay, buddy, thanks, and then just like wrote their story. Who knows? Well, I really want to know what the dynamic of them was like, because you're right. We're going west, no, we're going east, and then just fight each other. And maybe they were all hopped up on, adrenaline or whatever it was. Maybe, these guys are big workout guys because they're big guys. They're NBA, one guy's an NBA player. Maybe they just have all that testosterone where it was just, I'm a man, I'm right. No, I'm a man, I'm right. And they just fought each other. And then, the rest is history. But
yeah, a lot of unanswered questions, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said before, I mean, I might be stealing Tony's job here, but please leave any comments about this, any memories that you have about it. I hope we're at least wrong in the fact that it didn't get much coverage back in the day. I mean, I believe that it did. I've seen ABC, NBC, but I just think the frequency that's talked about is just very low for the severity of the situation. So please feel free to hit us up about that. I'd love to hear more about it if I can.
Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, like you said, like I don't remember it, you don't remember it.
Right.
It's a whole generation now that just, it's in the workforce that just graduated college. That was 6 when or not even 5 when it happened.
Right.
Less.
Right.
So. Well, with that will do it for another episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Tony Sapita. Thank you to my co-host Nick Barr for joining me again today. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, guys. See ya.